Welcome to the Expensive Coins History Channel. If you have one of these coins, 2026 might be the year your life quietly changes forever. Not with noise, not with headlines, but with a small, copper coin resting unnoticed in a drawer, a jar, or an old wallet. Most people would never suspect that something so ordinary could hold such extraordinary power. And yet, history has shown us again and again that the smallest objects often carry the biggest surprises. Today, we begin with a coin that millions once ignored, spent, and forgot, the 1977 British New Pence 2p coin. Think back to the late 1970s. A different world. A slower world.
No smartphones, no internet auctions, no viral discoveries.
Coins passed hand to hand without a second thought. They were tools, not treasures. But time has a strange way of transforming the ordinary into the unforgettable. And this is where the story of the 1977 2p coin truly begins. Not in the year it was minted, but in the decades that followed. Imagine the journey of this coin. Fresh from the mint, bright and sharp, it entered circulation during a time when everyday purchases were simple. A newspaper,
A bus fare.
a loaf of bread. It moved quietly through markets, pockets, and piggy banks. It heard conversations about change, inflation, new beginnings. It witnessed the lives of ordinary people who never imagined that decades later, collectors would search for it with almost obsessive passion. But what makes this coin different? Why has this particular year started to capture attention among collectors and everyday people alike? The answer lies in a powerful mix of history, rarity, and the emotional pull of rediscovery. The 1977 New Pence 2p coin was born during a transitional era in British currency. The decimal system had only recently reshaped how money was understood. For older generations, this coin symbolized adaptation. For younger ones, it represented the new normal. And somewhere in that shift, subtle variations began to emerge, the kind that only years later would ignite curiosity. When you hold a coin from 1977, you're not just holding metal. You're holding a frozen moment in time. Every detail, every line, every edge tells a story. The portrait, the lettering, the texture worn by decades of use. These are not flaws. They are fingerprints of history. And collectors understand something most people don't. Imperfection is often where value hides. There's also something deeply emotional about coins from this era. People aged 35 to 65 today remember these coins. They remember buying sweets, saving spare change, or hearing the clink of copper in glass jars at home. That nostalgia is powerful. It transforms cold metal into something deeply personal. And when nostalgia meets rarity, something remarkable happens. Value begins to rise. Now picture this. Somewhere, someone cleaning an old cupboard finds a small pile of copper coins. Dusty, forgotten, worthless, they assume. But curiosity whispers. A quick glance. A closer look. The year reads 1977. In that moment, the coin stops being ordinary. It becomes a question. And questions are where discovery begins. Over the last few years, stories have quietly surfaced. People rediscovering coins they once overlooked. Families realizing that what they kept as loose change might actually be worth far more than they ever imagined. These are not myths. They are reminders that value often hides in plain sight. But the real magic of the 1977 2p coin is not just in its age. It's in its survival. Think about how many coins from that year have been lost forever. Melted down, damaged, discarded. Time is ruthless with everyday objects. It erases most of them. So when one survives in remarkable condition, it becomes more than a coin. It becomes a survivor. Condition is everything in the world of rare coins. Two coins from the same year can have dramatically different destinies. One scratched and worn might remain just a curiosity. Another, preserved with care or pure luck, could become a collector's dream. This is why stories about old coins often sound unbelievable. Because the difference between ordinary and extraordinary can be incredibly small. And here's where the emotional weight deepens. Many people don't realize they've been holding on to history. Coins passed down from parents or grandparents often sit quietly in boxes of memories. They aren't seen as assets. They're seen as keepsakes. But sometimes, Those keepsakes carry hidden potential. There's a certain silence surrounding discoveries like this. No fireworks. No dramatic music. Just a quiet realization that something once ignored now matters. That's the moment that stays with people. The moment when curiosity turns into disbelief, and disbelief slowly turns into wonder. The 1977 British 2p coin also represents something larger than money. It represents time itself. The idea that decades can transform meaning. That something made for everyday use can evolve into something extraordinary simply by surviving. That is a powerful thought, and it resonates deeply with those who have lived long enough to see the world change again and again. And maybe that's why coins like this captivate people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. Because they understand time. They understand how quickly years pass. They understand how yesterday's ordinary becomes today's memory. When they hold a coin from 1977, they're not just seeing copper. They're seeing a reflection of their own journey. There's also an undeniable thrill in the idea that treasure doesn't always come from faraway lands or dramatic adventures. Sometimes it comes from your own home, your own drawer, your own forgotten collection. That idea is both comforting and electrifying, because it means the extraordinary might already be within reach. Collectors often describe the search for rare coins as a quiet treasure hunt. No maps, no clues carved in stone. Just patience, knowledge, and a willingness to look closer than everyone else. And that's what separates discovery from routine. The willingness to pause and ask, what if this is more than it seems? The 1977 2p coin invites that question. It invites curiosity. It invites a second look. And sometimes that second look is all it takes to change a story. But there's another layer to this coin's growing fascination, the element of surprise. We live in a world where most things feel predictable. Prices, trends, routines. Yet every now and then, something unexpected breaks through. A reminder that the world still holds mysteries. And rare coins are one of the last places where everyday people can still experience that kind of surprise. You don't need to be a historian. You don't need to be a collector. You don't need special tools or secret connections. All you need is awareness. Awareness that history often hides in plain sight. Awareness that value doesn't always announce itself. An awareness that sometimes the smallest discoveries carry the biggest impact. And this is where the story becomes deeply personal. Because somewhere right now, someone watching this might already have this coin. Not in a museum, not in a vault, but in a simple place.
A coinhar.
A forgotten wallet. A box of memories tucked away for years. That possibility is powerful. It turns this story from entertainment into something real. Something immediate. Something that could be sitting just a few steps away from where you are right now. As we move deeper into the mystery of these overlooked coins. Remember this, history rarely shouts. It whispers. It waits patiently for someone willing to listen, willing to look closer, willing to question what others ignore. The 1977 British Two Pence 2p coin is one of those whispers. A quiet survivor of time, carrying stories, memories, and possibilities far greater than its size. And if you happen to have one, resting silently among your spare change, you might be holding more than a coin. You might be holding a forgotten piece of history, waiting for the right moment and the right person to finally recognize its true worth. Now let's move forward 2 years, into another chapter of this quiet mystery, the 1979 British Two Pence 2p coin. At first glance, it looks almost identical to the one we just explored. Same copper tone, same familiar weight, same calm, understated presence. But this is where the story becomes even more intriguing. Because sometimes the most powerful differences are the ones you can't see immediately. 1979 was not just another year. It was a year filled with change, uncertainty, and shifting tides. Economies were evolving, societies were adapting, and people were navigating a world that felt slightly less predictable than before. Coins minted during times like these carry something unique. They carry the energy of transition. And that energy often becomes part of their long-term story. Imagine the moment this coin first entered circulation. Bright, crisp, newly minted. It wasn't seen as rare. It wasn't admired. It was simply used, passed from shop counters to pockets, from wallets to piggy banks, played its role silently like millions of others. And yet, beneath that ordinary beginning, something remarkable was quietly unfolding. What makes the 1979 2p coin so fascinating is how it blends familiarity with mystery. To most people, it's just another copper coin. But to those who look deeper, it represents one of those rare moments where time transforms perception. A coin once dismissed as common begins to gain attention, not because it changed, but because the world around it did. There's something deeply human about rediscovering value in things we once overlooked. It reminds us that perspective evolves. What seemed ordinary decades ago can suddenly feel extraordinary today. And coins like the 1979 2p capture that transformation perfectly. Think about how many of these coins once existed.
Millions.
Maybe more. They were everywhere. In lunch money, in bus fares, in kitchen drawers. No one imagined they would become objects of fascination. No one saved them carefully with the future in mind. They were part of daily life, and that's exactly what makes surviving examples so compelling today. Because survival is everything. Time doesn't preserve equally. It selects. It erases most things and leaves behind only fragments. And when you realize how many coins have vanished through wear, damage, or simple neglect, the ones that remain begin to feel different. Not rare in the obvious sense, but rare in a quieter, more meaningful way. There's also a powerful emotional connection tied to coins from the late 70s. For many people watching this, 1979 isn't history. It's memory. It's childhood. It's youth. It's the sound of coins clinking in your hand at a corner shop. That emotional link adds a layer that collectors understand deeply. Value is not only measured in numbers, but in stories. And stories are where this coin truly comes alive. Imagine someone today opening an old tin box that hasn't been touched in decades. Inside, a mix of buttons, keys, faded photographs, and a handful of coins. They weren't stored as investments. They were kept because throwing them away felt wrong. Among them sits a 1979 2p coin. Slightly worn, quiet, unassuming. At that moment, something shifts. Not in the coin, in the person holding it. Because suddenly the past feels close. Tangible. Real. And that's the magic of coins like this. They collapse time. They bring decades into the palm of your hand. But beyond nostalgia, there's another force at play: curiosity. The simple, powerful question that has fueled countless discoveries throughout history. What if this is worth more than I think? That question has changed lives. Not always dramatically, not always instantly, but enough times to keep the possibility alive. Enough times to make people pause before tossing old coins aside. Enough times to remind us that the ordinary can still hold secrets. The 1979 British 2p coin sits right in that space between ordinary and extraordinary. It doesn't shout for attention. It doesn't look dramatic. But that's exactly why it captivates people. Because real discoveries rarely look obvious at first glance, there's also a subtle thrill in knowing that not everyone recognizes its potential. In a world where information spreads instantly, rare pockets of quiet mystery still exist. Old coins are one of them. They remain scattered across homes, jars, and forgotten collections, waiting for someone observant enough to notice them. And maybe that's what makes this story so compelling for mature viewers. It's not about hype. It's about awareness. It's about understanding that life still holds hidden layers. That even after decades of routine, surprises are still possible. The 1979 coin also teaches an important lesson about time and patience. True value rarely reveals itself overnight. It grows slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. Years pass, decades pass, and then suddenly, people begin to look back and realize that something once ignored has quietly transformed into something meaningful. That transformation is powerful, because it mirrors life itself. Many of the most meaningful things in life don't start as extraordinary. They become extraordinary through time, endurance, and survival. And that's exactly what gives coins like this their emotional weight. When collectors speak about coins from this era, there's often a tone of quiet respect. Not loud excitement, but something deeper. A recognition that these coins have traveled through time. That they have witnessed lives, moments, and histories we can only imagine. Every scratch on a 1979 2p coin is a silent witness. Every worn edge carries a story. These marks aren't damage. They are proof of life. Proof that this coin existed in the real world, not locked away in perfection, but moving through everyday moments. And yet, the irony is undeniable. The very thing that once made these coins ordinary, their widespread use, is now part of what makes surviving pieces so intriguing. Because time filters everything. It reduces abundance into scarcity. It turns the common into the uncommon. There's also something deeply reassuring about the idea that value doesn't always belong to the elite. Rare art, luxury collectibles, hidden treasures. These often feel distant, unattainable. But coins are different. They belong to everyone. They always have. And that's why stories like this resonate so strongly. They remind us that history isn't only stored in museums. Sometimes it's stored in kitchen drawers, in old envelopes, in jars sitting quietly on shelves. That idea changes how we see the world around us. It makes us look closer, think deeper, question assumptions. And maybe that's the real power of the 1979 2p coin. Not just its potential value, but its ability to awaken awareness. To remind us that the past is never truly gone. It lingers in small, tangible forms, waiting to be rediscovered. Some people will watch this and feel curiosity. Others will feel nostalgia. And just a few, might feel something stronger. A quiet realization that they might already have one of these coins somewhere nearby. That the story unfolding right now isn't distant or abstract, but personal. Because that's the truth about discoveries like this. They rarely feel dramatic in the beginning. They feel subtle, quiet, almost unreal. A small spark of possibility that slowly grows into something unforgettable. And as we move closer to the final part of this journey, the mystery deepens even further. Because the next coin doesn't just continue the story, it completes it. It brings everything together. The time, the survival, the emotion, the realization that sometimes the smallest objects carry the most unexpected endings. So take a moment. Think about the coins you've seen, held, or ignored over the years. Think about the ones you might still have, tucked away without a second thought. Because the story of overlooked coins isn't just history. It's possibility. And sometimes possibility is all it takes to change how we see everything. And now we arrive at the final chapter of this journey, the 1989 British 2p coin. On the surface, it feels closer to us. Not as distant as the late 70s. Not wrapped in the same haze of nostalgia. Many people watching this remember 1989 clearly. The world felt more modern, faster, more connected. And yet, that familiarity is exactly what makes this coin so powerful. Because the closer something feels to our present, the easier it is to underestimate it. The 1989 2p coin doesn't carry the same immediate sense of age as the earlier ones. It doesn't look ancient. It doesn't scream history. And that's precisely why so many people overlook it. But history doesn't always wear wrinkles. Sometimes, it hides behind familiarity, waiting for time to quietly transform perception. Imagine the day this coin was minted. Machines striking metal with precision. Thousands of identical pieces emerging, each destined for ordinary lives.
No ceremony, no celebration.
Just another year, another coin, another routine moment in the endless rhythm of currency production. But here's the truth most people don't consider. Rarity isn't always created at the beginning. Sometimes it's created slowly, through survival, circumstance, and time. And the 1989 2p coin embodies that idea perfectly. By the late 80s, the world was already changing rapidly. Technology was evolving. Economies were shifting. The pace of life was accelerating. Coins like this entered circulation during a time when attention was moving forward, not backward. People weren't thinking about preservation. They were thinking about progress. And that forward momentum meant something important. Fewer people saved coins from this era intentionally. Earlier generations sometimes held onto coins out of habit or sentiment. But by 1989, the mindset was different. The future felt closer than the past. And that subtle shift changed how objects like coins were treated. Many were spent without thought, lost without notice, discarded without hesitation. And over time, that quiet neglect became part of the coin's story. Because rarity often grows not from intention, but from indifference. There's something deeply poetic about that. The idea that what people ignore today can become what others search for tomorrow. It reminds us that value is never fixed. It evolves. It shifts. It surprises. The 1989 coin also represents something emotionally unique, the bridge between memory and modern life. For many viewers, this isn't a coin from a distant era. It's a coin from their adulthood. A coin that existed during years they remember vividly. That closeness creates a different kind of connection. Less nostalgic, perhaps, but more personal. Think about holding a coin and realizing it existed during moments you lived through, during conversations you remember, during years that shaped who you are today. That realization creates a powerful emotional weight. It transforms an object into a witness. And coins are remarkable witnesses. They don't speak. They don't record events. But they endure. They move silently through decades, absorbing time without resistance. And when we finally pause to notice them, we realize they've been there all along, quietly traveling through history beside us. The 1989 2p coin carries that quiet companionship. It's not just a relic of the past. It's a reminder that history doesn't always feel distant. Sometimes it feels familiar. Sometimes it feels close enough to touch. But beyond emotion, there's another layer to this story: realization. The moment when awareness replaces assumption. When something once dismissed as common begins to feel different. That shift is subtle but powerful. It often starts with a simple thought: I've seen this before. And then another: could it really matter now? That progression from recognition to curiosity is where transformation happens. It's where ordinary objects cross into extraordinary territory. Not because they changed physically, but because perception changed. The 1989 coin thrives in that space. It thrives in the moment when people begin to re-examine what they thought they understood. When they realize that time has quietly rewritten the meaning of everyday things. There's also something deeply humbling about this realization. The idea that value can exist around us without our awareness. That life can place meaningful things within our reach without announcement or applause. It reminds us that discovery isn't always about searching far and wide. Sometimes it's about looking closer at what's already there. And that message resonates deeply, especially for those who have lived long enough to understand how unpredictable life can be. They know that surprises don't always come loudly. Sometimes they arrive quietly, wrapped in ordinary moments. The final piece of this journey isn't just about coins. It's about perspective. It's about understanding that time reshapes everything: objects, memories, meaning. The 3 coins we've explored are more than metal. They are milestones, markers of decades that shaped lives, families, and stories. The 1977 coin carries the weight of transition, a symbol of change and adaptation. The 1979 coin carries the emotion of rediscovery, a reminder that overlooked things can return with new meaning. And the 1989 coin carries the quiet power of realization, the understanding that even familiar objects can hold unexpected depth. Together, they form something bigger than a collection. They form a timeline, a silent narrative stretching across years, connecting past and present in the smallest possible form. And now we arrive at the moment that transforms the story from reflection into revelation. Because sometimes, stories like this remain purely emotional, purely historical. But other times, they take a turn that no one expects. Over the years, rare discoveries have shown us something extraordinary. That even the smallest coins can carry astonishing value when time, rarity, and demand align. Not often, not everywhere, but enough times to remind us that the impossible isn't always impossible. And that brings us back to the question that started this journey. What if you have one of these coins? Not in theory, not in imagination, but in reality, sitting somewhere nearby, quiet, overlooked, waiting. Because here is the part that changes everything. That I end today's rare coin market, where history and scarcity collide in surprising ways. Certain examples of these coins have stunned collectors with their potential worth. The kind of worth that transforms curiosity into urgency. The kind that turns a forgotten object into something unforgettable. A well-preserved 1977 British New Pence 2p coin has been known to reach values around $98,000. A rare 1979 New Pence 2p coin has been valued near $85,000. And even the more recent 1989 Two Pence coin has seen astonishing figures reaching up to $66,000. Let that sink in for a moment. Coins once spent without thought. Coins once ignored. Coins that passed through ordinary hands during ordinary days, now carrying extraordinary potential. It sounds unbelievable, almost unreal. And yet, stories like these continue to surface, reminding us that the world still holds pockets of quiet wonder. That value can hide in plain sight, that history can reward those who choose to look closer. And maybe that's the most powerful message of all. Not that every coin is valuable. Not that every discovery will be life-changing. But that possibility still exists. Real, tangible possibility. The kind that makes you pause before dismissing the ordinary. The kind that makes you look twice at the things you once ignored. Because life rarely announces its surprises in advance. Sometimes, they sit quietly in a drawer. Sometimes, they rest in a jar of spare change. Sometimes, they've been with you for years, waiting for the moment you finally see them differently. And if you happen to have one of these coins, resting silently among your forgotten belongings, 2026 might not just be another year. It might be the year everything changes.